where was Merrick Garland's press conference on this former president and current presidential candidate, the target of an Iranian Pakistani assassination plot, hiring a hitman? And where's FBI Director Christopher Wray? Maybe they should be out there telling the public what they have and what's going on. Joe Biden, of course, has been missing for weeks. He's in hiding. Last time we saw him, he wandered onto a Gulfstream jet for a couple of minutes and then came back out. Nobody knows why. You know, we're less than 3 months away from Election Day and still have no answers from law enforcement about the real and immediate threats to Donald Trump's life. Now, this is quite an extraordinary one, I've got to say. I'd like to think that a former president, current presidential candidate, Republican nominee, you've got Iran behind the curtain sending a Pakistani to New York to hire a hitman or hitmen, passing cash to assassinate Donald Trump. And Joe Biden's Justice Department and Christopher Wray's FBI are silent and once again MIA.
Yeah, this should be perhaps one of the biggest law enforcement stories, national security stories of the year, and they really are just burying that. Yeah. But I think what's really concerning about this, you look at our Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Mayorkas and under Kamala Harris as the borders are, and they've been more concerned about seeing how many illegal aliens they could have to bring into the country and putting our public safety and our national security at risk because they have this political agenda to flood the country with illegal aliens. And it doesn't seem like they're on top of anything at this point, which is truly scary. But why isn't this brought to the forefront? Because it's politics, because they don't want to look at, like, Iran wants to get Donald Trump. That certainly would make Donald Trump to seem like a stronger figure. And, you know, obviously Joe Biden is weak and Kamala Harris is a weak leader. But for every reason, they are not bringing this the proper attention. And it is scary that this guy, anyone could get in here. There's no safeguards to prevent anyone from getting into the country to do Donald Trump harm or any of us harm.
We know we've had an unprecedented number of people on the terror watch list nabbed at the southern border. And worthy of note, I think, very important, the Iranians didn't send anybody to kill Joe Biden, who's the actual president of the United States in theory. They sent somebody to kill Donald Trump, who is not the president of the United States. Why not Joe Biden? That's, you know, they're funneling billions of dollars to Iran, for one thing. You know, the left-wing media has all but forgotten the assassination attempt on President Trump recently, and they're not covering this either. And honestly, this should be a gigantic story, shouldn't it?
Of course, but you also don't want to sometimes platform these people where you find one Pakistani guy. If that happens every few weeks, you're going to have a press conference every few weeks. There's a reason that we, you know, school shootings. Sometimes we're trying not to use the name of the school shooter because everyone wants their, you know, the crazy people want their 15 minutes of fame.
But the school shooting gets attention.
Of course.
Like, we don't know this guy's name now. Like,
we don't know if it was a specific name. Plot or if this was just the early stages.
Trying to kill Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, this would be wall-to-wall coverage. There's a reason why they don't want to make Donald Trump look like a martyr, because that helps him. And there's a reason why Iran is doing this, because President Trump got us out of the insane Iran nuclear deal, and Joe Biden is propping this deal up, and Iran is closer to achieving a nuclear weapon now than they've ever been before.
They were much further away from a nuclear weapon when Obama was had started that nuclear deal. And with Trump, when Trump pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal, there's no limits. There's no limits on what Iran can do to develop a nuclear weapon.
Certainly more emboldened.
I got to tell you, you know, that JCPOA, the worst deal ever, which didn't go through the Senate and was just a backdoor deal, allowed Iran to spin centrifuges, enrich uranium, operate in secret on bases that we didn't have access to, continue to advance their ballistic missile program, where they write death to America and death to the Jews on the nose cones when they launched the missiles. They were on their way to a nuclear arsenal, thanks to Barack Obama and that lame brain deal that bolt-neck John Kerry cobbled together. You know, the bad guys here are pretty clear. And also Barack Obama opened the floodgates for tens of billions of dollars to go to Iran, the #1 sponsor of terror in the world.
And meanwhile, Iran is funding these rabble-scrabble groups in the Middle East to try to hit the United States. I mean, listen, we should all be on alert, and we should all have a very good sense of whether the former president, could be next president, is under such a potential risk of his life that, you know, there are multiple plots going on. This should not be a story that's covered up. It should absolutely be putting every American on alarm.